Okay, great. Okay. Well, thank you for being here today, because this is an incredibly important issue that has got our blood boiling. It is so unconscionable and so cruel. And if I said to you that there was a fifth grade student who's deaf, and somebody came along and stripped her listening device from her while she was in the classroom, you would think that's bullying, right? You would think that she's being bullied by another student. But this is a situation where we actually have the city of New York, our own government, bullying not just that student, but thousands of students with disabilities throughout our city who attend non-public schools. Now, under state and federal law, children with disabilities are legally mandated to receive services, accommodations, so they can learn despite their disability, to make it easier for them to be able to interpret, to hear, to understand the curriculum. And that is why we're here today, because the city is violating that state and that federal law. The federal law is a law going back to 1973, the Disabilities Education Act. And these children right now are not receiving the accommodations required by that law that would provide them with accommodations based on their individualized education services program. It is unconscionable to us that the city is doing this. And every elected official here has joined our councilman, Joseph Borelli, our minority leader in the city council, in writing to the city of New York, asking nicely for them to restore these services once we heard about it at the beginning of the school year. It is now over a month later, and the city is still violating state and federal law and depriving these children from the education that they need, that they deserve, and that they're entitled to. And so we are asking for the U.S. Department of Education to intervene, to hold New York City accountable, to help us get these services restored for the thousands of children across our city who are dealing with significant learning loss at this moment. It is unconscionable, it is cruel what the city is doing, and it is illegal. I want to introduce one of the parents who is here today, who is the mother of that fifth grade student here at St. Joseph's Hill Academy, who is being denied this essential service. It is shocking when she first told me what her family is enduring, what her child is enduring. Unconscionable is not even the word. It is literally cruel what the city of New York is doing to this fifth grade student. So I'd like to introduce her mother, Marissa Jones.
Good morning, Marissa.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm here to talk about what this Committee for Special Education has denied services to, I think it's thousands of kids across Staten Island, specifically my three children, more specifically my daughter Sienna, who is a fifth grade student at St. Joseph Hill Academy, who is finally, after years of being in an auditory oral program, able to mainstream last year with the supports of her IESP. Her IESP mandated that she has what's called an FM unit, which allows the sound to go directly into her cochlear implant so she could hear the teacher throughout the day. Because of this notice of intent letter that I did not submit because I was never provided with a copy of it, I was never told that this was mandatory for my daughter to get services. Since 2018, my children have had IESPs. Never once was I provided with a copy of this form. Never once was I told to submit this form in order to receive services. We had an IESP meeting where the DOE developed an IESP for my daughter, which provided her with the least amount of services that she needed to succeed in a mainstream classroom. That same DOE and that same Department of Education is now denying my daughter services because I didn't provide an information sheet that contains my name, address, telephone number, and email address. all the information that I had to provide in requesting services in the first place. So now the DOE, the FM unit that my daughter is supposed to wear is allocated to her. Her audiologist from the DOE has it in her room but cannot release it to my daughter because DOE says that she can't get it because of a notice of intent form that wasn't submitted. Without this, my daughter can't hear the teacher in the classroom. She's effectively denied her right to an education. She's supposed to get other services that help her. Last year, with the services in place, my daughter held over an 80 average in the first year of her mainstreaming in a classroom. This year, she's failing 2 major subjects, math and science, because she's not able to get the support. She doesn't hear all the information in the classroom. And even working with her after school is not enough because she's missing so much. It's been 2 months since she hasn't had these services. How do you make up for the regression? How do you make up for the lost time? They say for every day a child loses the supports, it takes about, I think it's 3 or 4 days to make up for that time. So these children have lost 2 months. We had providers in place. I spoke to the providers. They were on schedule. The school has done everything in their power to help all of the students to get the supports that they need. We've worked with the CSE. We've provided them with all the information. And now they're denying these kids and all the kids. I've spoke to at least a dozen parents yesterday whose children haven't received, whether it's their speech, whether it's their sets, whether they're dyslexic and they're supposed to have teachers that come in to support to make sure that they're getting the extra help that they need. Doesn't it make more sense to support the kids now so we don't have to support them for the rest of their lives? They're creating mental health issues. They're creating kids that aren't confident, that are having behavioral issues because they can't survive in a classroom. They're failing. Kids that were thriving last year with the services in place are now failing this year, and they don't understand why because they're just children. What does that do for our society? What are we saving? The amount of money that DOE is spending to pay people to deny services, it would be cheaper for them just to provide the services for the kids, get them what they need so that they could survive, and then they wouldn't need the services long term. I think that's...
Well, you make too much sense, so. I mean, so think about that. This girl has a listening device that is specific to her. It's been programmed for her. It has her name on it. She was using it all these years and throughout the summer. And come September, she comes to school and it's just taken from her. It's already paid for. What is the problem? It is so unconscionable and egregious, and that is why I say it is cruel. And it's also illegal. I'd like to introduce my colleague from the New York State Senate. This is a bipartisan effort to restore these services. On Monday, I wrote a letter with Congressman Richie Torres of the Bronx to call on the US DOE to intervene here. And I also want to introduce my colleague who's been a great fighter for the people of Staten Island and Brooklyn, particularly our children. And I want to thank our state senator, Jessica Scarcella-Spanton, for joining us here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and I'm proud to be here with my colleagues to call on New York City to do the right thing, but beyond that, to make sure that our federal counterparts, they know and they're doing the work, all of our state colleagues are doing the work to say this is in violation of the law. I can't imagine, Marissa, my daughter is also in 5th grade, having something that she needs to learn locked in a closet. It's paid for. These services are there. And I know as a mom myself that when kids fall behind the first couple of months, they lose confidence. They start not doing well in their classes. Then they start coming home and they'll say they don't want to go to school today. This is cruel to do to children. It's the wrong thing, and we're going to leave no stone unturned until these services are put back in place for our non-public school students. Thank you.
I want to introduce our council minority leader who has really been at the forefront of this issue. And quite frankly, when we were working on it at the beginning of the school year, when we first heard about it, I mean, right, Joe, you thought it was going to be resolved within a week because it's legally.
That's what we were all told.
We were all told that it was going to, that this wasn't going to be an issue. And it's unbelievable that we're here now a month later and the city has not done the right thing. But I want to thank Joe for being a leader on this issue, Councilman Joe Borelli.
Thank you. So as Nicole stole from me,
I have two objections to this issue that we're here discussing today. Number one, at the 5,000 foot level, this has been my 19th year in government, and in that time, normally an issue that is so blatantly problematic, so on its face foolish, you can normally find one or two people in an agency of 100,000 or so people. You can find that one or two people who are competent and willing to just hear you out and address the problem. And when this issue first came to our attention, I genuinely believed this would be one of those issues where we would hear back in a couple of days, hey, give us a week, problem solved, we had a glitch on our end, we're going to resolve it. I was shocked when that was not the answer that we got. At the 40,000 foot level, this is an agency, the Department of Education, that's willing to violate federal law. They're willing to infringe on rights provided by the state constitution, all in defense of a trivial, technocratic, bureaucratic rule that was so insignificant that they actually didn't even care about it for the 3 or 4 years during COVID. Again, this is a rule that was so useless, so unnecessary, so worthless, so unimportant, so irrelevant to the amount of money they need to budget per school, all the reasons they're giving us now. It was so irrelevant during COVID that they didn't even care about it. And now suddenly here in the 2024 school year, this is a rule that they just simply can't figure out how to operate without. And it's troubling because at the back end of this problem that we face as elected officials on government are real students with real challenges who actually get the benefit of the New York City Department of Education. We always criticize the New York City DOE. They're very easy to criticize. And yet here we are saying that you guys, the DOE, are doing a good job. You're providing services. You have people that understand the kids, that are enhancing their ability to learn, that are addressing shortcomings that they might have, challenges that they have, and we want you to keep doing it. And they're the ones resting on these technocratic nonsense rules that, again, were so insignificant that they weren't even followed for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And Joe's partner in the City Council is our councilman from the Mid-Island, and that is David Carr.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Congresswoman, for bringing us all together. Thank you to my colleagues for fighting the good fight, Minority Leader Borelli, Assemblyman Riley, and so many others who are trying to get students back their rights, the right to the education that the law says they must have. It's ridiculous that weeks after many of us gathered at St. Clair's and were demanding that then Chancellor Banks do the right thing and give these non-public school students the education that the law mandates they should have, that they need to have in order to learn effectively. And now we're a new chancellor later, weeks later, and the problem still isn't resolved. It's ridiculous. And the fact that we're now holding all of these kids' educations up, burdening families over a little scrap of paper, seems to suggest that there is a lack of care and respect for the choices parents have made to send their children to non-public schools. Every child deserves the education they need, regardless of what kind of school they enter, the school their parents chose, whether it's their locally zoned public school, a Catholic school like St. Joseph Hill behind us, a yeshiva, a secular non-public school, a charter school. Every child deserves to have the best education that we can give them, and it's our parents, the parents of our students, who get to decide where that education is going to best be served. Parents across Staten Island and Brooklyn and the rest of the city chose many different non-public schools that serve their children well in partnership with the services that the city must by law provide. And we're going to keep fighting until those kids get those services back again. Thank you.
Thank you, David. We're fortunate to have 2 members who were part of the Community Education Council now serving in our state legislature, bringing a real unique perspective and a great perspective on education. And I'd like to introduce our first member, and that is Assemblyman Michael Riley.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you to my colleagues for being here. Listen, we're here united as one Staten Island for our kids. Every kid, whether you go to public school, whether you're homeschooled, whether you go to a private school, it doesn't matter. You know, when this all started, like Joe said earlier, we thought this would have been handled. We've gone through 2 chancellors now. I've contacted both of them several times. In fact, our current chancellor, I was in contact with her when she was the deputy chancellor trying to work on this. I was told the non-public school students will get addressed. Their IESP services will eventually be instituted. Obviously, that is a false claim. You know, when they sent out emails to the families that were denied, at the bottom of the email, it said, if you'd like to enroll in public school, here's a link. I'm usually not a conspiracy theorist, but I can tell you this. This was diabolical. They had a plan. They put dollars over our kids. That's exactly what they did here. I'm done playing nice, asking nicely. You have a job to do. Just recently, on Monday, we had a Zoom call, an elected Zoom call with the mayor's administration. The new first deputy, a couple of other new people. And I said, can we get this addressed? It's mayoral control of New York City public schools. Well, Mr. Mayor, it's time for you to take control. If not, then maybe when we go back to the legislature, we have to really think about mayoral control. I'm a firm supporter of mayoral control. You know why? Because it puts somebody in charge of our schools and holds them accountable. Well, we're holding you accountable, and we're going to continue to do that. You know, they changed the standard operating procedure at DOE when it came to notifying non-public schools about the requirement to hand in notice that you need this service. All of a sudden, that SOP this year took that line out. Like I said, I'm not a conspiracy theorist usually. But unfortunately, when there's smoke, sometimes there's fire. And this is an example of that. And if the mayor can't do it, then the governor must step in. Do an executive order. This is an emergency. We will have kids who fell behind during COVID regressing even further. So sign that executive order. Declare a state of emergency in New York City for our most vulnerable children. You know, if a parent did this, you could damn sure count on the DOE, the mayor's office, or anyone else contacting ACS for neglect. Mr. Mayor, do it now.
Thank you. All right, we are in the 64th Assembly District. My former Assembly District and current representative is my good friend, Michael Tanusis, another fighter for our community in Albany.
Thank you so much to our Congresswoman for having this press conference today and for calling for the Department of Education to take action here. You are a taxpayer of the city of New York, whether your children go to public school or they go to private school. In fact, if your children go to private school, you're paying the tuition as well as footing the bill for the kids that go to public school. This is a violation of federal law, very, very clear. But then again, I guess the city's used to violating federal law. In this situation, we need them to take action now. We have been in contact with them since the beginning, even before, in August, before the semester started. And they said that this will be fixed. This has not been fixed. Fix it now, and whatever plan you had in terms of denying these services to try to get children enrolled in public school is disgraceful. Fix it now.
And the second member from the Community Education Council who now serves in the New York State Assembly, someone who knows our education issues inside and out, Sam Pirazzolo.
Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry for what you're going through as far as your daughter is concerned, and all of the students, not only really just on Staten Island, but all of New York City. So, Mayor Adams, I'm going to address my comments to you directly. This is your administration. You know, and I mean with the utmost respect. There's a lot going on in your administration right now, and people are questioning your leadership. And if there was ever a time to step to the plate and show leadership, this is certainly it. We know that this is not happening because of dollars. We know that the money is there. I've already notified you that there's an offense here, a federal offense, that you're not giving children services that you knew last year your daughter needed these services. As a matter of fact, ever since this child entered the system, you knew that you needed these services. So you are knowingly and willingly making the decision every single day not to provide services, not only to this mother's daughter, but to the children of families all across the city. That is wrong. And there's something that my colleague, Assemblyman Riley, said that on the bottom of that notice was, if you want to enroll your child in public school, do so, is a little bit of a plug. So I wonder what would happen if you did enroll your daughter in public school, maybe over a holiday weekend.
I was told she would get her unit the next day.
There you go. And then, not even, take her out of the school system and bring her back here. So now the DOE knows she's got her unit, and now she's going to a different school. So if there are games that have to be played, maybe we will be able to start playing those games. But with my colleagues, I agree that we need to call on Governor Hochul. Maybe we can set up a bipartisan meeting, letter, conversation with Governor Hochul. It's time to step in. It's time to get this fixed. If we have to go to the national level, we can. So once again, Mr. Mayor, if there's ever a time that Staten Island, New York City, needed a hero, it's now. I'm sure you've got a cape somewhere. It's time to strap it on and become the hero that we all need, the children of New York City need, to get their services back. Thank you.
I just want to acknowledge that we also have a representative from District Attorney McMahon's office, as well as Councilwoman Camilla Hanks's office, and our Staten Island Borough President, who will come up in a moment. But to highlight, every single elected official, minus one, is represented here today, and it is so critical that you see that this is a bipartisan effort. In Staten Island, we're sticking together to fight back against this mayoral administration that is doing this to our children. I want to introduce Adrienne Stallone, who is representing our Borough President, Vito Fasella.
Thank you, Congresswoman. On behalf of Vito Fasella, he apologizes for not being here. He did have a prior commitment, but however, he stands united with everyone who's standing behind me. We continue to receive numerous calls from private school parents regarding DOE's lack of concern or action taken regarding their children's IESPs and the services that are not being provided. This is unacceptable. These are mandated services that private school children, like public school children, are entitled to. These children have been without their required services for almost 2 months. DOE needs to find the solution and provide the services needed to these children immediately. We support any and all efforts to get these students the services they need, and we thank Congresswoman Malliotakis and all of his colleagues for doing what she can to get this done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to invite Carrie, who is a mother of 4 students, here to speak, and then we will have Marissa also speak once again, so CBS can capture that. So,
I just wanted to put things in perspective. This is the letter that they wanted signed. They've had all of this information prior to this year. I met with them in May. Their representatives that met with me that were from IESP services did not give me this letter. They met with me, I asked them what I needed for my children to receive services, and this letter never came up. So I just want everybody to understand, as a parent fighting for their children to have services, we were never given this. In May, this letter was supposed to be returned back June 1st. So in May, individuals that work for the Department of Education did not have this letter, or those ones that I met with were uninformed about what the letter should look like to give to parents who needed services for their children. So it's unfair, it's unjust, and these kids are suffering. Our school is doing everything they can, but there's just so far that they can take children who need services. Thank you.
thank you. And our Assemblyman, Mike Riley, just reminded me that that form is not required under state law to be completed to receive the services. They only need to be notified. Marissa, would you like to just, because we have CBS that joined us, I would love for them to hear your story. And if people have to go, I understand.
Hi, my name is Marissa. I have 3 children that attend St. Joseph Hill Academy. All three of my children have IESPs. My one daughter, Sienna Sheen, is a 5th grader here. She is profoundly deaf in both ears. She wears a cochlear implant in one ear. In order for her to succeed in a classroom, she needs an FM unit, which is a unit that the teacher wears so that the sound goes directly into her ear, because the acoustics in a classroom and the noise in a classroom makes her unable to hear the lesson plan. She has had this FM unit since she entered school, since she was 3 years old. She has always needed this unit. DOE has always provided her this unit. It has always been given to the teacher at the beginning of the school year. The teacher has been trained how to use it. Last year, Sienna finally mainstreamed into the school at St. Joseph Hill. She had an excellent year. The principal had said that she had a perpetual smile because she was so happy to finally mainstream and have the same experience her brother and sister had. This year, she had supports in place. She had her FM unit, she had a teacher of the deaf, and she had hearing services. And with that, she was able to maintain an over 80 average. This year, DOE denied all three of my kids' services, specifically Sienna, and was told because I didn't submit this notice of intent letter. She had these supports all throughout the summer. So when we got to school in September, the first day of school, the teacher wasn't provided the FM unit. I went to CSE to question why she wouldn't be provided it, and I was told that if I enrolled her in public school, the very next day they would provide her with this unit. Without this FM unit, my daughter sits and stares into space. She doesn't hear the lesson plan. She's now failing in 2 classes, science and math, a kid who was thriving last year. By denying these kids the services, I see my daughter came home crying that day and saying, "We have a big problem. I can't hear in the class. You have to get me this unit." We're creating mental health issues. We're creating kids who are confident, who are learning, who are thriving. You took away services that they had in place to help them succeed in a classroom, and they don't understand why. They don't understand why they're not passing tests, why they're now failing. It creates behavioral issues. You're creating a society that give them the supports today so they're not dependent later on in life by not having a proper education, by not learning, by not being able to read and write for kids that need assistance who are dyslexic, and not giving them the supports to be able to teach them how to read, to give them the extra services. Is that what we want? A nation of kids, or a state of kids who are dependent on the government indefinitely because they weren't provided the supports that they need today to let them succeed in the future? That's it. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you. And so just to wrap up, I'll end with how I started, which is if you had a 5th grade deaf student in a classroom, someone came along and just took away her listening device so she couldn't hear, wouldn't you call that bullying? And that is exactly what is happening to Sienna and thousands of other students across our city who are being denied these federally and state mandated and required services to help children with disabilities. It is wrong, it is unconscionable, it is cruel, and it is illegal. And we are calling on the city to return these services, and we're calling for the U.S. Department of Education to intervene and hold the city accountable to make sure that these children are receiving the accommodations that they are entitled to as is required under state and federal law. So thank you for attending, and we'll take, if there's a question or two from the media.